I've always wanted to ask if you have any tips for someone wanting to start a similar kind of blog. Well, this is quite a big subject matter. There is quite a lot to sort of discuss, so I'll kind of just touch upon a few things. I guess from a more technical side of things, with starting a blog, you want to look at the different platforms that can be on offer to you. So I started with WordPress, and I started with WordPress.com, which means it's hosted by WordPress. So it doesn't really look sometimes like a full website, but it's a little bit easier to use. And then after about 2 years of having my blog, I switched to self-hosted, which is wordpress.org. And self-hosted means that you can, I guess, tailor things a lot more, but there is a little bit more work involved, and I did have to, well, I paid someone to switch me over to that because I'm not that good with technology to be able to trust myself to make that transition successfully. But there's WordPress, there's Foursquare, there's a couple of other ones that I can't quite remember off the top of my head right now. But I would just, yeah, look into what might suit your needs the best. Obviously, sometimes these things do cost. I would recommend paying for a full domain. It does kind of look a bit nicer than having like something at WordPress or .wordpress.org or whatever. So that would be my advice in terms of the technical side. So in terms of your question about starting a similar blog, I'm assuming then that you're going to go with more of like the vintage pinup kind of thing. And there are a lot of blogs out there now, and so I think you just have to try and find your little corner of it, because you know the pinup community is just growing so much, and so there's no need for like a whole bunch of people doing the exact same thing. So I think it's really cool if you can somehow like diversify and find your little niche and something that you can bring to the table that no one else can. You know, be it like there's some really cool vintage blogs that are more craft inspired or baking, or you know, there's little kind of offshoots that you can go for that just give it a little bit of something different. So yeah, just try and find your niche and something really unique to you, and avoid just sort of copying what other people are doing, because actually you're going to be more successful and your blog is going to do better if it's new and it's invigorating and it's not just sort of a clone of something else. So stand out from the blog crowd. Next question. When you wear stockings, does the suspender belt always match your undies, and do your undies always match? So I'm assuming you're asking, when you wear stockings, does the suspender belt match my undies, and does like my undies and my bra match? Short answer, no. I kind of have a lot of like sort of bits and pieces of stuff that I love. So I have like a lot of what Katie did. I have a few Rago things, but yeah, most of my kind of underwear is what Katie did, and I love like the Rago long line bra, and I do have a suspender belt from them too, although it's pretty worn out. But I do have my favourite pieces, and so when I'm wanting something specific to work with something else or to create an overall kind of shape or silhouette, then I will usually just kind of mix and match. And to be honest, no, not often is everything matching, because say I might love this particular suspender belt, but I've only got it in nude, and the bra that I need to wear with my particular dress that I'm going to wear is black, so it's not going to match. My stockings, I guess, tend to match a little better with the suspender belt in most cases. If I'm wearing a darker seam stocking, like the black contrast or something like that, then I will go with usually a black suspender belt. If I'm wearing like a latte colour or the nude kind of colours, then I will tend to go for more of a nude suspender belt. So I guess in that regard that matches. But no, I am not very good at matching everything perfectly, because I also really like being comfortable, and certain things just work better with each other but don't necessarily match. I am just getting started with the hair, makeup and clothes, and I'm curious about what 5 things that every vintage inspired woman needs in her collection, especially starting out. 5 things. Okay. Petticoat. Go with a black or a white, depending on what your kind of general colour palette is. I think a petticoat is just like so essential to the pinup look, but I'm a big fan of poof. I would recommend getting the Samantha petticoat from Malco Modes, because you can actually change the length of the petticoat by re-threading the elastic. So you can have 3 different lengths, which is great when, you know, some dresses are slightly longer or shorter and you don't want your petticoat to be hanging out too much. So the Samantha petticoat by Malco Modes. But also if you're just starting out, then sometimes it's really good to have the basics so that you can really mix and match with other things. So I would want for me, a plain black skirt. So maybe if you're a little bit more into the pencil styles, go for a pencil, but I like swing, so a circle skirt or a gathered skirt. When I first started out, I had a plain black, I think it was a Doris skirt by Pinup Girl Clothing, and I wore that so much because I could put all the different tops that I was buying with it and really create lots of different outfits. So definitely just like some sort of good staple skirt. Maybe if you don't like to wear a lot of black, then don't get black, but it is quite a versatile colour for being able to match with other tops. Next, I would say something, it's not specifically one thing, but I would say depending on how you plan on setting your hair, make sure that you've got whatever you need for that. So for me, I would be like sponge rollers, but you might want to do tongs or hot rollers or something like that. So being able to really nail getting a curl in your hair and therefore be able to start practicing those vintage styles is really essential. So you need to start that process of learning how to set your hair. I love sponge rollers or bendy rollers, and they're not for everyone, so maybe try something else to start with, but definitely my third thing would be to have some way of curling your hair. Now, kind of carrying on from the hair theme, I would say that having some chiffon headscarves is a great thing to have when you're starting out. When you are first starting out and you're not quite as confident with doing vintage hairstyles, using a headscarf and kind of utilizing it in a way that you can put it up into a beehive, or you can make a sort of style that potentially isn't really vintage, but you can turn it a little bit kind of pin-up by adding a nice scarf. So I think having a good collection of chiffon headscarves is really, really cool. I used them a lot when I was starting out, and I don't really use them as much anymore just because I guess my style has evolved a little bit, but they were essential to my collection when I was first dressing pin-up. Next, I would say invest in some good foundation garments. So I love wearing a long line bra. It really creates that vintage silhouette. A lot of people think that I wear corsets all the time, and I don't. Most of the time it's just a long line bra. I am blessed with a naturally small waist, so the long line bra really just sort of smooths, but it does help to give a little bit of that effect. So try like the Rago longline bra, try some of the what Katie did items. They have waist cinches if you want to kind of have even a little bit more of a nipped in waist but without the kind of sturdiness of a corset. The waist cinches are much more flexible and a bit more comfortable. And kind of try out some stockings. It can be a bit scary at first because it's all quite different to, you know, what we've been brought up with in modern underwear, but it does kind of give you this little boost, and they go really nicely under vintage clothing. And finally, I guess my fifth thing would be some good shoes. So you are going to slowly have to build a collection up of shoes that kind of suit your style. Now, when you're first starting out and your wardrobe is a little smaller, then you're going to want your shoes to be quite versatile, so they're going to go with everything. So maybe to stick with some nice black shoes or a red or a colour that perhaps you really wear a lot of. Bait footwear is one of my favourites, as well as Miss Elfire, or even just some cute Mary Janes that you can find in some local shops. It doesn't have to be like an actual vintage inspired shoe. There are plenty of modern styles of shoes out there that can work with the vintage style easily enough. Next question, how do you store all of your petticoats? So I bought one of those cheap hanging shoe racks. I like them, they're made out of a material, so they're very soft, and you can stuff them into those. I don't have anywhere to hang it in my bedroom, so it's actually kind of just hidden behind the bed and lying down, but it gives me these little sections to be able to stuff a petticoat into, but hanging would obviously be a little bit more ideal, but that is the easiest way. I have quite a few petticoats, and when they're all just kind of free, they take up a lot of space, so you do want somewhere to really stuff them into and compact the size. How did you get started with photo shoots, and what would be your advice for those wanting to start with pinup photos? So I started doing a little bit of pinup photography you know, when I was quite early on. I did do like 1 or 2 kind of shoots for stores and things, but in New Zealand there's not really that many shops, well, especially back then, who, you know, would want me to model for them. And then I just kind of found this lovely lady called Elizabeth Jury, and we found each other through a Facebook group, and we're like, let's do a, you know, a photo shoot together. And it was just a collaborative thing, so kind of we were just doing it for the experience, and she was getting to try out, you know, doing pinup photography, and I was getting the photos in return. So we sort of started with that. We met and we just totally clicked, and then it all just kind of like spiraled. So for the next like 2 years we did shoots all the time, probably like one a month. And that was kind of what I used on my blog, and as time went on we'd get the occasional job where a company would, you know, send me items of clothing to shoot for their website, so an actual like kind of I guess contracted out to model and photograph items for the website, and we did that for Pigtails and Pirates a couple of times, so that was really fun. But to be honest, like back then in New Zealand the paid modelling was basically non-existent. It was really only until after I moved to the UK that I guess I classed myself as like a pin-up model in terms of I'm getting paid and it is a job. It's not just kind of not paid and therefore more of a hobby, if that makes sense. So there is more opportunity here to actually get like paid gigs as a model. But my advice to you with wanting to start out pin-up shoots is, you know, find people that you like. I would highly recommend not just picking someone because they're cheap and potentially you are going to have bad photos, and also then if you do get into it more and more later on in later years, you don't really want those photos floating around. So don't just go with someone if they're cheap, and don't expect that you can just do it for free. I've been lucky that I have been able to work with some great photographers. Sometimes it's been free, sometimes it's been on a collaborative basis, and sometimes I've paid for it. And just another thing to note, that if you are lucky enough to get to collaborate with a photographer and sort of trade skills, then just make sure that you properly credit them if you're posting on social media. Make sure that you tag them at all times. Don't put your own filters over it, don't crop it, don't crop out their watermark. Really respect that this is their trade. You have given them your time as a model, but also you need to respect that this is their art form, and so you can't kind of expect to be able to alter it and kind of make it not theirs, because it's just not very good form to do so. So that would be my advice in terms of getting into pin-up photos. Alright, so the last question before the quick fire round is, how often do you have non-vintage days where you just chill out in jeans or yoga pants, and does this make you feel like you're cheating on the whole vintage look that you showcase? Well, it sort of varies a lot. So when I was doing hairdressing back in New Zealand, I hardly ever had like kind of non-vintage days, just because I was getting dressed up to go to work all the time, and then on the weekends a lot of the time I was going out. So I was getting dressed up a lot more than I guess sometimes what I am now. But my kind of life is very varied now. So there's sometimes when I'm going out and about, or I've got events, or I've got things to do, and I'll get a bit dressed up more. Whereas there's other times where I can go kind of 3 or 4 days and I'm just in like my workout gear or my pajamas, because I'm just working on my computer and it's all very, very low key. So yeah, there's no definite kind of answer as to how often that is. It's very much a varied thing for me. And do I feel like I'm cheating on it? Not really, because some days it's just like maybe not practical to get all dressed up, or if I am just basically going to be sitting at my computer all day, then I'm not going to put in that time, because I can better use that time. And so no, I don't feel like I'm cheating on the vintage look, and I do try to occasionally share little snippets of that side of me. It's usually on my Instagram stories if you're not following me on there. But I do try to share like little bits of, you know, of those moments, like maybe me in my gym gear. I was recently in holiday in France and I was not dressed up at all the entire time. So yeah, I don't feel like I'm cheating on it, and on the days when I'm not dressed up, I do kind of miss it. Like, it's nice after a consecutive like 3 or 4 days when I haven't gotten dressed up. It is always a real little boost when I do, and I'm like, oh yeah, you just get that little spring in your step and a little bit of extra confidence, because you just, I don't know, it does feel like me. It does feel more like me, and it just does give me that boost. Okay, now it is time for the very first quickfire round. Favourite vintage event? Viva Las Vegas, baby. Which Hogwarts house are you in? Well, Pottermore put me in Ravenclaw, but I'm not convinced. A few people have said I'm definitely not Ravenclaw material, so I don't really know. Dark, white, or milk chocolate? All chocolate? Who is your Doctor Who? Matt Smith. Favourite cocktail? Margarita. Favourite musical? Dun 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 dun. Definitely Phantom of the Opera. Favourite vintage hairstyle? Probably this. Set and brush out, I would say. Yeah. And which book have you read the most times? I don't know 100%. It's probably either one of the Harry Potter books or something by Philippa Gregory. Thank you very much for tuning into episode 3 of Ask Miss Victory Violet, and thank you again to Collective Clothing for being the sponsors of this series. This dress that I'm wearing today is part of the new autumn-winter season, and it has recently been released on the website. It is called the Quinn Leopard Print Doll Dress, and I will put the link for it in the description box below. If you'd like to submit a question for episode 4 of Ask Miss Victory Violet, then just leave a comment below and I might just pick your question. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you next time.